will pull no punches. I'm appalled by the development that we do largely in WA, and you're here because you believe probably the same thing. But it's one thing to bag things out, you then need to step up to the plate and come up with something different. So I'll be talking about that today, and what I believe are some of the most important things we need to understand if we're going to have a living earth, if we need to remind ourselves of that. So lots of things I throw into the mix. So one of my great heroes, Wayne Dyer, some of you will probably know him, a great spiritual teacher, and this is the most powerful saying that I remember. There is nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come. And you think about it, I was talking beforehand about renewable energy, you know, you think of it. It was the David and Goliath battle. Fossil fuels had all the money and the power and the influence, and yet despite that, the idea had come that we should not be destroying the air that we breathe to create energy. It just doesn't make sense to anyone, and as long as we believe in the new ideas, and sorry it's jumping forward, then it's very, very powerful for us. So a lot of what I'm talking about tonight, I believe the idea has well and truly come. It's well and truly baked. It's time to give birth to the changes that we're all believing in when we're here. So, onto the houses and the way that we build. Now, there is such a schism between what we need as a West Australian diverse population and what is being built. And fundamentally, when you have a look at it, and there's not too many graphs like this, but the main thing I wanted to actually show you was that the big houses that we all know about, the McMansions, the trophy houses, these enormous houses that we have, actually don't meet anything more than about a third of the housing demand. But what we know is driving these great big homes is, well, it's the emperor's new clothes. Well, you have to build big houses. That's what the real estate agents tell us. And the Housing Industry Association wants you to build big houses because it employs more people, they make more money, and we just have this self-fulfilling prophecy that you have to have these enormous houses. But the reality is, when you have a look at what's going on around the world, we have these enormous houses. So that's the average size of a house in WA, 240 square metres, the biggest houses officially on the planet. Yeehaw. But when you have a look at comparable, and we're not talking about living in the back streets of Dhaka, Bangladesh, and you know, some squat. We're talking about modern, beautiful, sophisticated apartments where people lead good, meaningful lives. Look at the size of the houses that we see other people living in, good, comfortable lives. So quite clearly, the size of the house that we are building does not actually meet anything what is required when we see what's happening around the rest of the world. So this is peering into these great big houses, and this was some heat tracking that was done. So the people that were living in this big house, they had these little trackers that were put on them. So the red dots represent where they spent time. So how much of that enormous house is just not being used? And again, when we start to peel back the veneer, there's a lot about the big houses that doesn't make any sense. So firstly, there's questionable quality. There's no doubt, and I think Tony and I were talking about this before, despairing about the quality of houses that are being built. They're being rolled out as these junk food suburbs, you know, just get them built as quick as possible. And what was the first thing that stimulus money was put towards? Build more houses, build more houses. So if anything, the quality has gone down even further, and that's the ghost rooms. In other words, we're building these places and we're spending money on things we don't need. So I believe they will become stranded assets. When people start to really look at what it means to have a house like that, the resale value, how much it costs to look after that and to keep it cool in summer and warm in winter, they are going to very quickly lose their appeal. And again, as we said, there's a great stat that shows that, and I had to pull it out because I was running out of time, but when you actually superimpose the typical big garage that's actually built with these houses, it takes up an area about this big. And 40% of those garages that are built, not even used for cars anyway. Okay, so here I go. I'm going to really lay the boot in now. It's on the canvas, and now I'm going to give it. So there it is. There's the McMansion, the trophy house. If I wanted to press myself, I'd drive through these suburbs. And that's what we see. So, big house means big mortgage. Fundamentally, you know, a big house costs more money. So that means people are spending more time away from their family and their friends, having nourishing lives, spending time probably driving in, commuting into some place, working for people they don't necessarily like, all to earn money to build things that they don't really need, to impress people they don't necessarily like, is the other thing here. And then more home means less garden. So as we know, the blocks have got smaller and the houses have got bigger. Guess what gets pushed out? The garden. And I know they've run up the white flag and surrendered when all they have is the artificial turf. And to me, going for, as a gardener, if you love gardens, going for artificial turf, that's like looking for love with a blow-up doll. What is it?
What am I married to?
You can make it all as spiritual life. Yes. Too many blokes going, oh, that's right. And a big house means big bills. Okay, you cannot live in that house. That roof, on a stinking hot day in Perth, you could fry an egg on that roof. I really want to get some footage of those black roofs frying an egg, and that will go viral. Again, you've got to join the dots for people. So if that's 200 square meters of black roof, you could not live in that house without the air conditioner. So imagine them coming home the end of a stinking hot day, and they stagger into the house because it's been cooking all day, and they stagger and just make it to turn the air conditioner down to 18 before they die, thinking they've stumbled into a Bikram yoga class. So these houses, you just... And the big house means big waste. The biggest percentage of waste, and we are one of the most wasteful societies on the planet, is what we call C&D waste, construction and demolition waste. So when, firstly, that was probably a perfectly good house beforehand. It's been knocked down, it raised one or two beautiful families, it probably had the orchard and the chook house, all gone. So there's all that waste, and then about 10% of what is used to build these houses is wasted. Again, it's volume homes, so they just throw everything at these things, and a massive amount is wasted. So the other thing is big house means big kids. Now by that I mean, sadly, we have one of the highest rates of childhood obesity on the planet. A third of our kids are overweight. Now, why would a kid want to go and play in that? Where's the fun? Where's the exploration? Where's the resilience? Where's the wildness? Where's the danger? Where's all of the things that we gravitated towards when we were young, and we had that opportunity to go outside and play until we were hungry and we came home. So, nature for many kids is a great big screen. So David Attenborough is in HD, and that's their experience of wildness and nature. So one of my friends who's a postdoctoral researcher, she's looking at the links between early childhood development and links to greenness. Now this isn't just hippie stuff. She's been able to show, and many other researchers, that when kids don't have meaningful access to gardens and to nature, they are impaired for life in terms of their cognitive development, their skills, their resilience, all of these preciously important cornerstones of what allow us to be strong, resilient, healthy human beings. And one of the most telling things she told me is that the average child, this cohort of the 30% that are obese, are getting less time outdoors than a maximum security prisoner. So if you're the worst of the worst prisoners, you have to legally have 1 hour out per day outside. You're allowed that, probably through the Sustainable Development Goals, you know, the rights of a human being. So a lot of our kids are not getting as much outdoor exercise as a maximum security prisoner. And why would you want to go outside? Again, why would you want to go out if that's your garden? And if it's artificial turf, again, God forbid. What's that all about? And there you go, just to prove all of this stuff. So that's the reality of that. And when you start to show people that, I'd love someone to challenge this, but you can't really. At the end of the day, you could say what you like, but the reality is, nothing here I'm saying is controversial. This is just rolling out the facts. And sadly, this is what we do. And if we assume that the average land in Perth is around $1,000 a square metre, roughly, somewhere around that, look how much money they've spent purchasing land for cars. If people came from another planet to look at Perth, they'd say, well, the dominant species is probably this thing, inhabited by these shiny red or white things that have these little black round things underneath them. They would assume that's the dominant species. Everything is about giving precious and time for the car. Okay. And then, of course, as I said before, this is what happens. We just knock down houses. When you talk to Europeans, they go, you knock down a house after 30 years? What's that all about? I met someone in Varanasi, it's not Europe, but in India, and now called Benares, and his family had lived in that house for 600 years. You know, it's just incredible, this idea that we have to knock down a perfectly good home just because we need to put this in. And again, what's driving this is the Housing Industry Association and this idea that we employ people by building new homes. And this is just on the corner of my place. So 2 perfectly good homes were knocked down, and look at their connection to everything. They clearly, you know, love living where they are. So it's artificial turf and shut it. There's no connection to anything. To me, a house becomes a home when it has that beautiful interface with nature, when it is really that morphing of the two. Okay, so, and then when you roll that out on a big scale, this is what we have. Now, this is called the heat island effect, which many of you will have heard about. So when we remove our beautiful bushland and vegetation and we replace it with large amounts of concrete, bitumen, paving, and God forbid artificial turf. Really what gets serious here is that with the heat island effect, these new suburbs can be any, and I'm loving this point, thank you, Bernie. The new suburbs can be anywhere from 6 to 12 degrees hotter than a leafy green suburb. So when we get to 45, 46 degrees on a stinking hot day in Perth, these suburbs here, you could not live there without air conditioning. And if you don't have air conditioning, then your life is compromised. You are seriously going to be living in a house that will compromise your ability to work and to have meaningful lives. So the important thing is we have to understand is we need to retain our trees, we need to be able to do whatever we can to change things. And you could be blindfolded and parachuted into anywhere in Perth, probably anywhere in the new suburbs of Australia, lift the blindfold off, look at that and go, I don't actually know where I am. This could be anywhere in Australia. It's the McHouse, the McGarden, everything, again, has been rolled out as this vanilla style of development. Okay, some other things that really we need to keep in mind when we're living here in Perth is that it is getting drier. We are the fastest drying part of the world's driest continent. I always say this twice because it's very powerful. We're the fastest drying part of the world's driest continent. When I grew up, all of our water came from dams. Now less than 7% of our water comes from rainfall. Our dams are full, but it's with desalinated water and water we're plundering from our aquifers. Thank God we have aquifers, and thank God we know about and can afford desalination. Otherwise, Western Australia would have collapsed. It would have made international news that this big, vibrant city ran out of water. And these red bars, you might be wondering, that's rainfall runoff into our dams. And look at the trend in terms of runoff. It's been plummeting. We used to get around 300 gigalitres. We get maybe 9 to 10 gigalitres of runoff now. That's because of climate change, and our soils are drying out. And then we have the worst soils in the world, and that makes things extraordinarily hard when you're trying to get landscapes to grow. And then we have this, and I always show this to people because this is probably the reason why we had to build a desalination plant, one of the incredibly expensive desalination plants. Why? Because people, does everyone know what that is? So that's the wax that coats the grains of sand. It's called water repellency. And we have the worst incidences of it anywhere on the planet. So the wax, which comes from the breakdown of organic material, coats the grains of sand. And why is that important? When it rains or you irrigate, where does water need to go to nourish your plants? To the ground. So if you have a thin veneer of wax, you can see it falling from the sky, dripping off the leaves, the birds having a bath in it, but it doesn't mean it's going into the soil. And therefore, people are watering again and again because they haven't even learned how to break that repellency, get the water into the soil. It becomes hugely important. And then people might say, this is a beautiful garden. But the reality is that this woman is fertilizing how we've been expected to grow plants. She's putting artificial fertilizer onto that sandy soil. The great bulk of that is going where? Into the groundwater or into the precious Swan and Canning River. So we're destroying these beautiful assets and this groundwater that we desperately need as potable water supplies because our sandy soils just cannot actually cope with the style of gardening, the style of farming, the style of landscape we've superimposed onto this ancient sandy landscape. It fundamentally says that we don't understand and connect with nature, and those homes that I showed you before really reflect that. It's guarding ourselves against nature, it's disconnecting from nature. And we always say that why do we feel we're at war with nature? And you only need to have a look at somewhere like a great big dark green hardware store chain. And if you go into the two biggest aisles in Bunnings, it's the kill aisle and it's the feed aisle. And that's the way we've been conditioned to think. We're at war with nature, we have to suppress it, we have to kill it, we have to destroy it, and then we basically feed the plants that we like with junk food fertilizer. And that's a big part of the way that we've been living. But then we need to understand that plants actually are incredibly beautiful, incredibly resourceful, and sophisticated organisms. If we look after them, they can actually look after themselves. And this photo here, and this is, I say it's the only mathematical formula you need to understand if you're into organic gardening. Healthy soil equals healthy plants, which equals healthy food, which then translates into healthy human beings. And any of those organisms that are allowing or are using that. Now these two big slimy things over here, they're my heroes. Why are they so important? They're the fungi, and they're the fruiting bodies for the fungi that are forming symbiotic relationships with the roots of my plants. So this was my virgin Picton. I killed all the grass off and put in a verge garden, but I built the soil up with compost and clay, And that is the reward. So when I saw that, I knew that this soil had been brought back to life. It was kick-started, and it was creating the conditions where this plant could be strong and resilient. Okay, now pulling all of this together, I'm going to introduce you to what I call the land care commandments, or the way we need to steward and look after this living earth of ours. So first is use the water and the nutrients where they fall. That's why I showed the water repellency image. So much of the water that we actually try and use to get our plants to grow is just wasted. And then we never leave the soil bare. We try to put some nourishing, nurturing mulch on top. And then very importantly, again, counter to what we are doing with housing at the moment. The garden should be the biggest room of the home. That beautiful morphing between the two. The house gets smaller, the garden gets bigger, and I believe so many of the issues and the ailments that we see as 21st century problems would start to recede, because the garden is one of the most important ways that we can create conditions for change. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about my place. So we have the Hammer Hill Sustainable Home. Has anyone been through when we've had the tours? Beautiful. So a few. We've had about 10,000 people through, and we bought the house in 2010. And that's what it looked like. I didn't change all of that, but the guy that I bought off, Ruben, he started with a good old post-war cottage. And they were built fast, they were built quite cheap, they were strong and sturdy, but there was no energy efficiency. That would have an energy rating of about 1 star. Freezing cold in winter, boiling hot in summer. So he started the process of making the change. And we then did lots to improve that property, and we retrofitted the home, and we got it up to about 8.5 stars by double glazing, lots of insulation in the walls and in the ceiling, and then underneath, painted the roof white, lots of things to make it energy efficient. Then the zoning changed. Now, when the zoning changes in Perth, people think they've hit the jackpot, and they probably have. The reality is you've only got 2 options at the moment that people think is available. One is Dal Alcott will come up to you and go, just flatten everything, and we'll come in, no questions asked, don't worry about it, and we'll put 4 beautiful battleship charcoal grey apartments, little bits of artificial turf, lots of paving, and away you go. Or Dal Alcott or Granny Flats WA will say, well, we'll just knock down the side there, get rid of all of your garden at the back, and plonk a great big McMansion in the back garden. That's pretty much infill in Perth, and it's horrendous. It's really not serving any of the needs that we have. And we do a lot of work with councils. And one of their great laments is they're losing so much of their urban forest canopy. Every single local government in WA is losing their trees. And it's not because councils are clearing, it's mum and dad developers thinking the only way they can capitalise on their piece of land is to just go with Dal Alcott, flatten everything, put 4 units, or the big McMansion at the back. And we're losing so much through that space. So we knew we had the opportunity for infill. We're not being martyrs. We're not saying don't develop. We're saying let's do it in a way where we can make some money and we can create a really meaningful, nourishing environment for people. So we came up with a tagline: 4 homes, 4 families, 40 trees. In other words, we believe that we can put all of them together so the trees become the centerpiece of what we're doing. So, my wonderful architect friend Matty Warwick, who's a big part of the Sustainable Practitioners Network, as is Peter Grant. Matty, I said to him, look, I want to do some infill where we are, and we had a hideous old garage there, good old asbestos thing, and I assumed, being a greenie environmentalist, well, we just use the existing footprint. I'll just put the 2 apartments there. And I showed him what I was thinking of doing, and he said, can I think about it? And he came back and he said, I actually think, don't put it there, put the 2 apartments in the corner, so this gorgeous jacaranda becomes the feature, and everyone is kind of facing in on that beautiful tree. That's the revered centerpiece for the development. Plus it meant we weren't having people right next to the house, and there's a shower right there, so that would have been really interesting. So again, his lateral thinking was fantastic, and he said, can I do some designs for you? And basically what we did was Matt's beautiful design. These are the 2 passive house apartments. Now we started clearing the block today. Now the block is 55 square meters, so it's very small. There's not much in that corner. So the ground floor apartment is 55 square meters, 2 bedroom, and the upstairs apartment, which is still for sale, that's 1 bedroom. And basically they'll be nestled in amongst the trees. There's our beautiful jacaranda. And this is the aerial view, so that's the same thing. There's the 2 apartments that are proposed. And when I say proposed, we start building in the next couple of weeks. an existing granny flat, the existing home, and that's the old asbestos shed, which we've turned into our own funky office. And everything you see shaded red, that's common area. So it's called built strata. So the idea with built strata is you already have existing homes. So if we take this granny flat as an example, it has its private front courtyard, back courtyard. The two proposed will have their own little courtyards, and I say that's where you can do your nude yoga. You know, fill your boots. That's your private space. Knock your socks off. When you come through the gate there, you need to ask permission before you do the nude yoga. But the point is, this is a shared space. So West Australians are really, really nervous about this idea of shared land, because we've been trained into thinking the only thing you care about is the bit that you bought. You know, the cadastral boundary, that's it. You don't worry about anything else. So for us, it's just educating people that we can create a nourishing community where you have your own private bit, but you get to share in the common space, which has been designed with the trees. We've got trampoline, fire pit, veggies, chooks, a pizzeria, all these different things that then become shared resources that we can enjoy. Now, we did a big opening in November last year. We had a stage set up on the trampoline just over here, and we had beer and pizzas, and we had a beautiful soiree in the evening and bands playing. And one of the ladies that came, Sabina, said at the end of the night, I want to buy the ground floor apartment. So she did, and she bought it off the plan. And I said, why? And she said, because I get it. This is actually what I've been looking for. I want a safe, nourishing space. I want to be part of a community. I want to live where it is a meaningful existence. I want to be able to share in all the different things that I enjoy with people that have the same attitudes towards things as me. Now, my son as well has autism. So from my perspective, I want to be able to create a development where I can make enough money through this that I can buy this house, I'll own it outright, and then it's his. And he will be part of a community that know him. This is not a space where no one knows one another. These are people that have self-selected. They want to live in a place like this. They want to live in a space where it's organically managed, where the trees are revered and protected, where people look out for each other and they enjoy each other's company. I can't think of a better legacy for my son than being able to say, he owns this, it's his safe space, and he's going to be in a community that can look after him. So there are many, many reasons why this style of development can work. And there's our gorgeous jacaranda, the feature, and that's some of the home tours where we've had people through. There's the granny flat, which has just had a big makeover. You can see we put a beautiful, I call it a tree house. My ex used to call it a tree platform. That's probably why we're divorced. She said, you can't call that a tree house, kids can fall off. But I actually believe it's just so fascinating when you see kids in that environment, how much they love it. I'm just going to touch on a couple of other projects that I think are very important and things that I'm passionate about. And again, it links to all of this. Kids need to be spending time outdoors. They need to be, and you're here because you get all of this already, but it's so important. And if you don't know this stuff already, it's fascinating how important it is for us to have our kids spending time getting their hands dirty, inoculating their gut biome. And these are some of the things you may not have heard, that gardeners often report that they feel happy. And internationally, whenever they've done surveys on happiness and resilience, people that nominate gardening as one of their major pastimes are often happier, because you get the dopamine high from, it's called the harvest high. So there are bacteria in the soil that when you unearth the soil and turn it, you release this beautiful bacteria which triggers the serotonin release in your brain. So there's a lot of science now that's backing up why we feel better in nature. Okay, this is a project that we worked on. So this is Hammy Hill, the mighty pear tree, if anyone knows beautiful pear tree. That's what it looked like. This hideous, it looked like Belfast or Beirut. This horrible, degraded place. Drug deals used to get smashed windows. It was just awful. So beautiful Ron and Asha set up the Pear Tree Cafe. And then we had this big ugly chunk out the front. So I approached Ron and Asha and said, can we put a pop-up forest here? I know it will really help your business. And again, it's about really peeling back that whole heat island effect problem that we face. And that's the same space after the beautiful Pear Tree Cafes come in, and there's our beautiful pop-up. So we ripped out the concrete, and it saves about 110 gigalitres of water per year. That's now going into the soil. We've been able to plant 5 trees, but lots of recycled material. But that is now a space that people enjoy. And we solve crime and make places safe and nourishing for people, either with a police station, So you have the presence of police, or you build spaces where so many people want to be that it has actually the same effect. Spaces that are known, that are loved, that are nourished, that are used, there's a lot less crime. So to me, it's a far more effective space. So there it was beforehand and after we put all of this in. And interestingly, all the products we use are recycled. I mentioned at the beginning, one of the biggest waste issues is construction and demolition waste. There are now wonderful recycling companies that turn all of those tiles and bricks into the most beautiful products. So all of our paths, all of our mulch, it's all recycled construction and demolition waste. So you can build these spaces and turn them into, and there it is, that's all crushed up bricks. Beautiful stuff. That's all crushed up white bricks. There's lots of different shades and colours and textures. And these gabion baskets, so they're wire cages that become fantastic seating. That's all filled with recycled material. So you can actually educate people as they're having their latte about these really important issues that affect us all. There's some close-ups. We've got some gorgeous art pieces put in there as well. Lots of plants. And they're all recycled spearwood poles. So they're about 80 years old. They're the old bean poles that the original Italian and Yugoslav market gardeners used to use. So we were able to recycle them, and as soon as you put them on top, it shades that space and they become absolutely beautiful when they're lit up at night. And if you've been to Bread and Common, that beautiful funky restaurant out the front, that's exactly where we got the design from. In fact, the guy who designed this for us, Tobias Bush, was the architect for Bread and Common. So you can turn them into beautiful spaces, and that was yesterday. We had a group of Indigenous healthcare workers and we had our morning tea down there. So it's become this wonderful space. And so for me, that's my passion. It's one thing to discredit what's wrong in society, but that's not enough. We have to inspire and empower that change, and you have to be the leaders, and you're all here because you believe in all of this sort of stuff. And I love this. Again, this is one of my favourite sayings. A society grows great when old men plant trees whose shade they know they will never sit under. And that's the society we need, where people are not doing it for themselves, they're not building these enormous houses, they're trying to actually create spaces that are better for the community in which they live. So Sunday, if anyone is interested, we have a sustainable home tour. It's from 2 to 4:30 p.m. So if you're interested, just go onto the City of Coburn website, who are great supporters of us, the City of Coburn. And yeah, that's $10 entry, but we'll go through everything that we're doing, what we've done to the home originally, all the retrofitting, and then what we're doing with the new development, and the angel investors as well. So how we raise the money, because banks won't touch build strata. Or if they do, they charge you more and there's all these fees. So we raised angel investor capital, which is wonderful. And that's how many of the great things are occurring on the planet. Okay? Some questions? How are we going for time?
Right on for the minutes. Well done. So thank you. That was a really, really entertaining talk. Really great. Thank you very much. I've learned so much more about the whole process. We'll take questions.
Yeah, I'd love to ask, because I'm on the precipice of doing something like what you are doing now. This is why I'm here.
Beautiful.
I'm interested in knowing more about how the strata system you've talked about, because I don't know what you've done there, but I really like that idea of no borders,
It's beautiful.
merging, sharing.
Okay, and I'll point to this beautiful banner over here. So I could not have done. I'm just a bloke who plants trees. This is but this is only because I have an amazing team working with me. So the Sustainable Practitioners Network, who Peter Grant is one of the founders. We have amazing architects, builders, planners. Good planners are gold, because they navigate you through the arcane world of planning. They're just like great lawyers. Most of us don't understand the law, but we know sometimes you need a good lawyer. A good planner is amazing. So we work with Melinda, and the built strata is very rarely used, but that's only because people don't know about it. So
that's the first time I've heard about it.
And that's the reason why we set up the Sustainable Practitioners Network, because we want people to take the road less travelled. We know that what we're asking people to do is really going where people haven't gone yet, and it can be quite intimidating because everything they keep seeing is counter to that. So that's why we've set this group up, so we can actually help people in that process.
Awesome.
Yeah. So that's really what that's all about. So get in contact with us.
Just a question about people living together, cohabitating
Yes.
in a space, and creating the boundaries, rules, agreements,
Yep.
and people are buying into the
Yep.
space. So,
Yep.
how do you get that to work?
That's such a great question. And I was talking beforehand. So there's a management statement. You have to legally have a management statement, which to me is the Book of Rules. Now, the Book of Rules is the really important gatekeeper. Now, if you're a McMansion person, 94.5, you got your Maserati, you're going to look at that Book of Rules and go, oh my God, that is hell. I wouldn't live there in a heartbeat. But for those that are passionate about this, the Book of Rules is, oh, thank God, a place where the things I value are actually going to be nurtured and protected. So the Book of Rules becomes very, very important. So there are quite a few co-op housing developments that are actually in Perth. So there's one on Swanbourne Street, there's one on Lee Street, Pine Street, I think, sorry. So there's some good ones around. And again, part of our network, we've got Ojani Stockman, who is amazing. She's done 2 extraordinary developments in Perth, and we'll literally be lifting her management statement and tweaking it and building that. So it'll say simple things like trees need to be retained and protected, organic management of the landscapes, everything done by consensus. So again, it shouldn't be that difficult. In my experience living here with the granny flat, which we've rented out for the last 11 years, is if you get the right people, in other words, they walk in and they get the vibe and it's for them, 90% of the problem is solved because you've got the right sort of people there. I don't know if that answers your question, but I can only from my own experience, when you start to create and show the vision of what you want, it attracts the kind of people that are already thinking that way, and you're 90% of the way there with that. Oh, have I moved out the way?
You're good.
I was just making sure that I was taking photos up here. Can I ask you a question as well?
Yes, of
So
course.
we had a good chat a couple of days ago,
Yes.
and saw you, I always thought you're just this great guy that does a whole heap of education for people, and you know, where's the business in this? So my question would be for anybody who is looking at doing what you've done, or you know, who any other kinds of developments, mental services. Like, how could somebody actually use your services from a consulting or project management? How does that work for
Thank
people?
you, Sarah. That's very cool. You're like my friend. He keeps kicking me up the arse and going,
That's my
okay.
job.
So my business is the Ferreira Project. So we are a commercial entity, and that's how I've made my living, is inspiring that change. So I can leave my cards, people can have a chat, and then check out Sustainable Practitioners Network. So that's a group of consultants, professionals, and we would basically, it's a fee for service, but I can absolutely promise and guarantee that you will get so much from being able to chat with these people and be able to help them to steer you and give you the results that you're after.
I think
That's
building on your question, you flag this book of rules, and that's great to have this foundation.
Yes.
But I think it would be important to discuss how we need to re-educate the community in terms of talking about, you know, creating opportunities to talk about the values we've got, and how does it look like, you know, and every day what is that plan or something.
Yeah.
Because the book of rules is one thing, but then the equivalent of this is just gates.
Of course.
You know, they book of rules too. So
Yeah.
I think there's an opportunity when you face mental health or anxiety or whatever, to also invest in yourself by signing up for something beautiful project like this.
Thank you, Pascal, and I could listen to you talk all day. I want your voice to be my serious.
That's all I do. I just don't say.
Look, that's so important, and the reason why we will continue to do this as a demonstration is people need to see that experience and come into a shared space like this and be able to talk to the people that live there. So on Sunday, I've invited one of the angel investors, and Sabina, who's purchased the ground floor, to talk to people. What does it mean to live in this space? And we need these as examples. So Sabina, who's purchased, she's very serious about this becoming the model for the future, and she said, absolutely, we'll continue on with the sustainable home opens, because people need to be able to come and see this and talk to real life people living in these places, and realizing that a lot of the fear that we might have that it can unravel doesn't actually manifest. If people are good to one another and they talk and communicate well, then things can change. And being able to have spaces where you go, yeah, we're going to sit around the barbie and have a pizza night, that's where you can really create the space and the conditions where you can just, as good human beings, being respectful to one another, actually come up with solutions, and it works. So thank you. So don't know if I answered that other than to
No,
say.
no, you did, and I'm looking for, it's exactly what we discussed it the previous time, to have some practical tips on how to progress, because we all align with this, and I'd love to, I will come to hear from this person, because she was not ahead like you are, but now she's signed up, and I'd love to hear why and all the insights.
Really committed to the process. She meets with us once a week. So Matt, the architect, and myself are in the office. She comes once a week, and we discuss which double glazing we're going to use. It's incredible. It's complete opposite to the way what normally happens, where if you've ever had anyone with the volume homes, it's a really degrading process. They're totally shut out of the process. They often wait weeks and months for things to happen. It can be a really demeaning process because you're just part of a volume market. This is so much different, and so she has that investment financially, but also emotionally in the space as well.
Talking of volume,
Yes.
opposition and shires.
Okay, there's not much opposition. I meant, so the comment was, is there opposition from shires? If you
Yeah.
talk to any good planner, they hate the way development is done.
Yeah.
They hate it. They did not study for 5 years to see the crap that we see rolled out.
But, you know, they're looking at 6 houses on a block compared to 2 or 3.
Well,
They're losing out on rates.
Well-
That's where I'm coming from.
okay, so this is actually the maximum number of houses that we could have on here.
Yeah.
So there's no, that's the beauty of this. We're doing everything that financially we could get if we did
that.
Yeah. So that's one, I said right at the beginning, this can't be a, oh, well, we sacrifice financially, because then you'll turn away 95% of the audience. If you show them that I was able to make enough to pay off my mortgage, bang, then people go, oh my God, he's a hippie, but actually that made financial sense. Oh, yeah. Whatever it takes, you know, and so councils, again, they're constantly trying to make sure that their good intentions are not bastardized. So there's now a thing called the deep soil policy, because so much artificial turf was just being laid out by shonky developers, because they went, oh, well, I don't want to put in a garden, we'll just roll out artificial turf. And the planners are going, that's not what was intended. So the deep soil policy means they have to put a tree. So they'll probably put a plastic one, I don't know. But the point is, planners don't like the way that development is, they're being railroaded to just fit this volume style of development. Lou.
Hi, I live on a 100-marker suburban block with a giant house inherited by various reasons. What you've done there, can you just say something about how renting works in a scenario like that?
Okay. And this, yeah, is that the question?
Yeah, I feel for whatever reason that there's kind of a moral need for people, like there's got to be rental.
Yes.
There has to be. In,
Yeah.
for my money,
Yes.
sustainability demands it, that there's high quality rental.
Yeah.
That's an excellent point.
It is an excellent point. Okay, so having bagged the big house, I live in a 4x2 house, but I rent out. I was renting out 2 rooms. I'm renting out 1 room in there. So lovely Lauren lives there with me renting, and I will ultimately build a house within the house. So there's 2 downstairs bedrooms. We'll turn that into its own self-contained apartment, which can be rented out. That could be an au pair for my son into the future, and then renting out the granny flat. So we've basically been able to rent that. I don't know if that answers your question, other than
I think my question, it went to that, and it also went to how do you manage that?
what, the renters or?
If you've become a landowner in Barron renting bits of your property to people, how do you live with yourself, and is there a book of rules? And
Yeah, you learn as you go. I mean, I've always been we generally have rented to people that know, and it's never been hard to, people just find out about when we have this rooms for rent, and it's very easy to select people that want to be there. So I've never had any problems. I was saying to someone beforehand, the only problem we ever had was Safi and Nate, who were living in the granny flat. They bought a puppy, lovely, beautiful puppy, and he just destroyed the garden. So the book of rules now will say, have a puppy, fill your boots, but he can't go out into the common area until he's not going to chew the irrigation and destroy everything. So the book of rules needs to just have that fine line between, you have your puppy, I know it's important for you, but you also need to recognise that I will have majority share of the common area, so I'll have to just say, yes, you can have your puppy, but until it can be respectful of the shared space, you're just going to have to supervise it, so things like that. So that's where I've basically been with the renting, is that I've always said they can share that space with me, and I've given them veggie beds and that sort of stuff, and I've never had any problems with it.
So what it brings up for me, having been a renter on other people's baronial properties, I never enjoyed it. Is there a new kind of person needed who would be like a sustainable mediator, or just say, look, I happen to own a place, but I'm not a skilled community facilitator.
Yeah, look, from my 11-year experience, I've never had to have that. We've had 5, 6 different people sharing and renting, and I've never had that problem because it self-selects. I guess what I'm saying is if you build with, and it is so different as a space from where you would normally rent, that as soon as you walk in, it just feels different and it attracts people that are already, as I said, thinking that way already. But my experience is 11 years, I've never had problems, I've never charged bond to anyone.
Self-selection.
I would see what Lou is flagging perfectly in line with this as a service.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Literally as a service, and we talked about it last
Yes.
talk.
Yeah.
Everybody had great idea, but someone was saying, how can I handle my neighbors because they think my garden stink. And we talked about how to manage this relationship building, and I think what you're saying would be definitely a service. Like I want this, I want that.
And that's what I own a real estate agency, and we have 250 rentals, and it's kind of similar to what we do is having that middle person, because people don't want to say to their neighbour next door, your compost heap really stinks and there's rats running out of it, and it's those kind of things. So having that middle, but it needs to be done really tactfully. I think it's really it's like employees, right? So you have and I feel what you're doing is like having a really strong employee culture.
Yes.
So as long as you have this is who we are, this is what we do, and actually follow through and do it. So you have really good guidelines, have a really amazing onboarding process, so there's no gaps. Everyone knows where all the boundaries are. And then you have reminders, and you're clear and kind with people when they break the rules, like the dog eating stuff.
And if I may just add to this, the notion of respect, because I should add, if you recall, the same person saying, "Oh, my neighbors complained about the smell from my, from my garden." They were complaining that the same people were overlooking their garden. So in a way, it was just two different words colliding, but none of them were here to compromise. In a way,
and you need a peacemaker in between, not a volatile blamer. Like it's really important that person in the middle is more like a social worker, and a peacekeeper, stakeholder relations, not you're wrong, I'm right person.
That's a fabulous point, and everything that you said there. If it came to that, and we needed to have an independent mediator or someone who was, then that's the beauty of a network like this. So we can say, Sue, what do you reckon? Is that a role that you take on?
Yeah.
And that could be something really powerful into the future.
Yeah, and like mediating is something I do with my business partner. But it's really it's important, because sometimes it's good to nip things in the bud before they become these, because then they hit a crescendo of craziness.
That's magnificent.
Might just be a suggestion box.
Instead
Instead.
that's
in
right.
the common area.
No, I love it, and that may be something professionally that we look to do.
Do we have one more question? Susanna.
Actually, I've got a couple of questions. One of them was the strata. I know in a lot of properties, like bulk houses, they have a strata account. Everyone pays into the money to the account, and then they pay people to come in and do this and do that. Does that happen here, or does
Yeah, so there will be a strata fee each year,
Yeah.
and that will, so the question was, will there be strata fees? The answer is yes. We have to have public liability. We have to be able to have maintenance fund. We probably have a discretionary fund as well, which we either put back at the end of the year, or we sit as a group and go, right, do we want to put in a pizza oven or a plunge pool, or does the tree need to be given an arborist care and attention? So absolutely.
So would everyone agree to put so many hours in a week to contribute to the area, or not?
Okay, so did everyone hear that comment? Yeah. Personally, I don't want to wed people to that. That's not a game changer. If they want to do that, I would love to think that it would be a voluntary thing where we might go, right, the veggie gardens need to be resurrected because that's where we're the
Because that creates community.
Yeah,
if
absolutely.
everyone contributes, right?
Yeah, so definitely, but personally, I think it's rather than saying you have to do this and this, it's just, right, we've got this opportunity to put these veggies and chooks back, let's find a weekend and we have a pizza.
Kind of a thing.
Sorry?
Busy bee day.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's an absolutely
And
critical.
people can opt in or opt out. They might
Yeah.
go, well, I am a contributor and I feel that I want to, do 20 hours a year towards the house.
Yeah.
And other people go, I'm too busy, but I'll throw an extra few $100 towards the strata fees every year.
Yeah. Definitely, and the opportunity exists for someone to say, I'll do the gardening, and my rates are reduced, or I get,
But
all
these
of
are the
that.
KPIs.
Yes.
But you need to be able to develop a place where in a book is enough trust among the people to be able to say, I mean, I've been doing the gardening for that long, and without hurting you, without taking it personally, and I think this is a nice
You killed
space.
the big tree. Yeah.
Can I just ask one quick one? In this plan here, you just have 2 or 3 houses?
4.
Four, sorry,
So
4.
1, 2, 3,
4
4.
plus 4 plus
So,
40.
yeah.
40 trees.
Yeah. Now, not all the trees are big. So some of the trees are Haekielarinas that are about the height of the fluoro. But to me, if I could stand under them and get some, I'm stretching the definition of trees.
So, so are you planning on doing bigger areas like 6, 10, 12 houses in one area, or what's your?
I personally
Where's your
would
mind
love to.
going with this?
I did an eco-village design on my mum and dad's farm in the mid-90s, and that was for 70 homes in 5 clusters.
Okay.
To me, that's the next thing that we need to be doing in our rural environments, is to create these beautiful spaces that I actually think people are hankering for,
Yeah,
and they can then become the most wonderful spaces to do retreats and healing and all that, which we touched on. So the model change doesn't.
Have you had much to do with the eco village down in
With Mike here?
Yeah.
So Mike was involved with me with the eco village we were doing on my farm. So that was from 96 to 2003. So I know. So the Witchcliff Eco Village. So so the principles don't change. This was just a much smaller version.
But that could be interesting to, instead of a big thing, because that brings more problem, to develop small ones, so create this dynamic here, but then add another one and another one, and see how it grows organically when someone knocked off the fence, start to jump over for the pizza, because that's very good,
You
whatever.
could have, then you can have this one's got the tightest. These ones have got the biggest tomatoes.
Yeah.
Competitive.
There's a plan, Chris.
Yes.
So thank you. So we need to sort of start to wind this up. That was a really entertaining talk. I really got a lot out of that. My only wish, I know it was videoed, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I wish more people would make this more available to more people, because there is so much that people could be doing. And to me, nothing's more depressing when you drive through these new suburbs, particularly when you're on a hill and you can see over the valley, and all you see is these roofs right up against where the trees, there's no green, It makes such a huge difference. We walk down from our street down to our park, we've got these huge trees, and the temperature difference is huge in the middle of summer. It's really nice. So we need more of that. So well done, and all the best. So please join me in thanking Chris for the very So just a brief announcement, our next Sundowner event will be on the 22nd of July, I believe it's the fourth Thursday of July. We have a really interesting speaker. His name is Renzo Peterson. He runs a company called Naturalplast, which is all about making compostable bioplastic. So he's got this really, really interesting process. Some of you may have heard of what he's doing. He's making these bioplastics, and they go straight into the compost, and then with the compost they then goes out and he regenerates like mine sites, and so they start growing all the plants. And so the idea is he puts all the plasticware into the mess halls and in the mine sites, for example, and then all that goes straight into the compost when they're finished. And then 16 weeks later it goes out as compost around the mine sites, and they regenerate the mine sites. It's really wonderful.
Cool.
And he's got some huge plans for the future. He's got a huge range of now products. I think the bottle of water somewhere. Not here. Okay. Yeah. But he's our next speaker, and he's going to be really soon. He's going to be providing all the plastic, which is going to be compostable as well, as a demonstration of what his company does. So it'll be a good thing. So again, please spread the word for the fourth Thursday of the month.
Thursday.
And if anyone, we are looking for more volunteers to join us on the committee. So if you are interested in joining our committee, Living Earth Projects, please come and see myself or Barb or Sarah up there. It's an opportunity to join the committee, to participate, help out, but also get your things you'd like to see on the agenda as possible talks and topics to bring to the community's awareness.
Is that film going to be available online?
If you ask really
It's not
nicely.
good.
I'll tell you what, if you buy a ticket to next month, yes.
Ever the market.
Not that we're into black but anyway.
Marketing.
All right.
Is that presentation available?
I can make that presentation available. So, Sarah, did you want to? I mean, it would be wonderful to be able to have access to that, and
I was totally joking. I'll pop it up on the YouTube channel.
and we'll share that.
All the hemp symposium stuff
Now,
up
is there
there.
going to be any issues around confidentiality and people? Is it just that looking at Chris?
Oh,
Basically? Are there any other
God.
people's photos,
That's-
headshots, and
No.
this place?
Back of
I'm
Tony.
going to look at the back of people's heads.
Does anybody have an objection to the back of the head being
You
on the
have-
video?
Yeah.
Would you mind to put the slides with your events, the date? And
Oh yes, yeah. So thank you. I'll put that one up again.
It's
back
this
up.
Sunday, isn't it?
Yes, this
You
Sunday.
don't have a chance to.
If you want to go and see Chris's house in is it Hamilton Hill?
Hamilton Hill, yes.
Hamilton Hill.
Down the road.
So
do you
it's
have them regularly?
yeah, it's all to do with funding. So I try and do them whenever I can. So City of Coburn have funded that one, which is really good.
And so whilst Chris is doing that, again, if there's a particular topic that you'd like to see presented, please come and see myself or Barb or Sarah, and just say, hey, this would be a great speaker, great topic, so we'd love to hear from you as well, okay? So that brings us to, okay, Barb wants to speak about our wine which is provided by you.
Oh yeah, I want to let you know about the wine.
Because it's super delish.
Yes.
So Craig Pensini and his wife have a vineyard in the Perth Hills. So they've got 355 vines that they planted about 20 years ago. So they're just small scale, but I was doing a holistic management course with Craig, and he said, I'd like this to be a bit of a sideline business for me. And I said, well, I can help you out with that. And our first sundowner, people just loved the wine. So he's our preferred wine supplier. He has 5 varieties: Shiraz, Merlot, Semillon Blanc and Cab Sav. He says the vines are vertical shoot positioning, so that for anyone that grows vines will know what that means. And he produces about 550 litres of wine from the 5 varieties each year. So he's about to start bottling again. And he also produces a port. So he uses regenerative agricultural practices. It's not quite organic, but it's as close as you can get. And he's very much about regenerating the soil, so the sort of things that Chris was talking about.
Very cool.
And there's a big movement happening in WA. And the pies were provided by a local baker. Now she delivered them. Peter knows all her details of.
And left us nothing. Except the pies.
They're handmade. The pastry to me tasted like it was handmade.
It's something like creme brulee or something, the name of the business.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
make creme brulees as well.
Right.
Yeah, it was.
The name's Melissa or Mel.
It's something like that. If you are interested, just email on the
It's a
website.
local
We'll come back
business
to you.
anyway.
Yeah.
So
And he was really keen to make sure he supported a local business that's doing lovely work. So I hope you enjoyed the pies. They were delivered just before you arrived.
Nice.
Thank you.
So the wine, is that you can go on the website?
No, he doesn't have a website.